Hello everyone. Today what we have is some special guests. Yes, special guests. Did you know that I'm gonna be playing in Major League Commander this weekend? The decks I've drafted are Kodama Sakashima, Butterfree, or like Protean Hull combo like Tana Tymna and Tayam, and also Kroxa. So to help me learn these decks quickly, what I've done is I've invited the deck designers for all of these decks, and they're gonna give us the secret tips, the quick guide for you to learn, or for me to learn those decks in time for the event. So let's hear it. Let's hear the spirit guides that I've summoned. The first one is Hissp with Sakashima Kodama. Let's hear it.
Hi Rebel, this is Hissp, here to give you some more info, some secrets perhaps, related to Sakashima Kodama. Lil Saka and the East Tree Boys, as my deck list is called. So the primary combo is looping Sun-Scorched Desert, which is a colorless land that has an ETB. Its ETB is target player, deal 1 damage to target player. So you can loop that with either Cloudstone Curio, or Maloku the Clouded Mirror, or Storm Cauldron, or Abora Breeze Caller, or Trade Routes. Those are the 5 cards in the deck. The other thing to say, a lot of other people ask me mulliganing, and my mulligans are almost always about ramp. The deck is really like a 2-card plus both commanders combo, so it's sort of heavy in the number of pieces on that have to be on the battlefield, but there's so many tutors and like ways to get there and draw. Like Prime Speaker Zagana is probably the best. That's like my go-to if I have Summoner's Pact or something in hand. I've never lost when I start going through, when Prime Speaker resolves, you draw 7 cards. Other tricks, I mean, Tezzeret is a cool card. One of the cool plays to do with Tezzeret is it's like faster to get to 5 mana, you can get Jeweled Lotus on 0, and then, I don't know, normal cEDH shit. That's sort of how I evaluate opening hands. I feel like a lot of people like to play mid-range. I must be my playstyle, but I'm like a real proactive, stop me if you can kind of player, and so that's how I play this deck. That's how I built this deck. The games that are usually unfortunate are the ones that you don't have a value engine, either a big draw like Prime Speaker or Tetiova. Venser is a really awesome card. I guess something to remember is that I use Expedition Map a ton because you can get it off of like Trinket Mage. Sometimes, like if you have Eldritch Evolution, like you can Eldritch Evolution a dork and then get Trinket Mage, and off of the ETBs you can get Expedition Map, and like a lot of times you'll need to generate a trigger. If you have like Cloudstone Curio out, for example, you need to have a trigger to be able to put land on to start the Curio loop. So it's just good to keep that in mind. Also, something I use a lot that I feel like this is sort of obvious as well, but you can fix mana you can turn colorless mana into blue mana with Aboro, with both your commanders out, since you can just bounce it. One of the weirdest cards in this list is Tidal Bore. You can do some funny stuff. You can mess up Godo, or mess up somebody's calculus with Nuchilag. Yeah, also there's a Kinnan combo which comes up pretty frequently. I'm running both Kinnan and Basalt Monolith, so you can, and we have pretty decent tutors for both in blue-green, so that's definitely a thing. Geode Golem's pretty cool. Also an unusual card. So basically the idea is to just, it's a 5 mana, get both your commanders out instead of 6, and then you actually have mana. All right.
Very interesting. That's very interesting.
Cool.
This is a very interesting deck, and there are a lot of little tricks behind it. A lot of little tricks. I think one of the really interesting things is finding Jeweled Lotus off of Tezzeret the Seeker. Never really thought about that. That's actually pretty cool. There's also the Oboro trick is very interesting. I never considered it that way. Yeah. So I think there's a lot to this deck, and if you want to play it, you really want to goldfish it a ton, because it just you want to learn how to manage the triggers really well and stuff like that, and there's a lot of different ways for you to get there, so very interesting. The next spirit guide I have for you all is twice deck designer for a Protean Hulk pile deck thing of Goblin Bombardment. Yep, it's Spite. Spite Master himself is here to teach us how to play the Spite deck.
Hey, this is Twice, making a quick guide on my deck 4C D&V to help out Rebel. 4C D&V is a mid-range creature combo deck that was built to fight against stacks decks that are focusing on Rule of Laws and Null Rods instead of more graveyard hate, and greedier mid-range decks that are taking out creature counters like Mana Drain and slimming down their removal package. As the name suggests, it's a Protean Hulk deck that focuses on the A+B of cheating Hulk into play and then sacking it to get its death trigger. In your mulligans, you're often looking for effects that cheat in Hulk, like Academy Rector, Pattern of Rebirth, and Natural Order, and lower in your mulls, you're looking for sack outlets or Tymna valuable cards like Loyal Apprentice. If you're against Turbo Nas, you might want to stop at a stack piece like Deafening Silence, but this is a specific matchup because you're just way slower than Turbo Nas will be. You normally want to look for these cheat effects because they're generally pretty hard to tutor for outside of Academy Rector in these colors, and because most of the sack outlets are creatures, and those are much easier to tutor for. I also like having the cheat effects in hand because there is one particular sack outlet that's kind of busted, and that's Greater Gargadon. It basically has Suspend, and you can sacrifice a permanent to remove a time counter from it. And this is great because Suspend plays around Rule of Laws. It doesn't use the sack to suspend the Gargadon. The Gargadon can't be removed, and the time counter is only removed on resolution, so you can keep using it as a sack outlet for that one turn. So like your big combo turn, you can just keep using it. Yeah, I hope this helps, and best of luck with the tournament, Rebel.
Ah, I see. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you Twice. Thank you. I think the most interesting part is actually considering to mulligan for things that your deck naturally doesn't tutor for a lot. I think that's a very good tactic. Something I haven't really thought about before, so I will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you. Now we have Josh. Josh with Seared Sausage Kroxa. Very interesting list with a really big focus on discarding cards from your opponent's hands. Kind of like a hand control discard kind of thing, with some like interesting synergies with it. So let's hear what Josh has to say, what secrets he has to share with us.
Kroxa is typically a disruptive deck, but can pivot into a fast win with the right setup. The fastest win available to us is none other than the Worldgorger Dragon combo, which consists of 2 cards and 3 mana, those 2 cards being Entomb, followed by an Animate Dead. The idea would be to Entomb Worldgorger Dragon, reanimate it with Animate Dead, make infinite mana, and cast Kroxa as many times as needed until you have won the game. Now, some tips about this combo specifically. If you do happen to draw Worldgorger Dragon, it is not the end of the world. These decks typically run enough targeted and global discard to make sure that you're able to get rid of Worldgorger Dragon should you happen to draw it. Likewise, if you do happen to have that perfect setup of Entomb and Animate Dead in hand, my favorite line is to actually Entomb Faithless Looting, flashback the Faithless Looting, discard the Worldgorger Dragon, and proceed to win from there. A quick warning about the Worldgorger Dragon combo, however, is how fragile it is. It may be fast, but you lose to just about every form of removal imaginable. Anything from bounce spells to exile target creature will ruin your day. That is why it is most important to be aware and pay attention to your opponents, the mana that they have open, the cards that they have in hand, and you can begin to predict what removal might be coming your way. For example, if an opponent has a full group of 7 cards and they felt comfortable tapping out against you except for 1 white mana, you might be looking down the barrel of a Swords to Plowshares, which would not only ruin your day but ruin your board as well. Now, on to some tips about mulligans. Kroxa is simply an outlet. Alone, he does not represent any kind of card advantage or value inside the command zone, so you need to mulligan until you have the right tutors or card advantage engines in order to remain in the game. A lot of our pilots suggest an early tutor of Waste Not if you're planning on grinding into the late game, so that way Kroxa actually turns into value himself, and repeated casts of Kroxa can do everything from get you creatures to mana to cards. If you are in a meta where you feel like people are going to try to win the game as quickly as possible, like typical turbo decks, your first tutor may want to be spent on getting the stacks piece that will stop them from winning. For example, if you know you are against a storm deck, you might want to get Damping Sphere to your hand as quickly as you can. As another little tip, there is skill in knowing when to put Kroxa into the command zone after a cast or when to put him into the graveyard. If you are going for an early World Gorger Dragon win, you'd need a creature in a graveyard in order to end the loop, and Kroxa being able to sacrifice himself fulfills that need perfectly. However, if you are planning on grinding into the mid-game, then maybe sending Kroxa back to the command zone for a second recast at 4 mana is the right path for you. Finally, and I cannot stress this enough, you are not an ad nauseum deck. The deck plays too much advantage and cantrips and stacks pieces that even a turn 1 or turn 2 ad nauseum won't be the most optimal thing. In fact, you probably won't get the pieces you need to win the game. I, in almost every game, like to tell my opponents this fact and help them direct their attention to the decks that are actually focusing on getting ad nauseum or need their life totals, like something like Godo and Treasonous Ogre. As a final parting tip, do not be afraid to cast Kroxa and get him to land and play permanently via escape. Kroxa represents a giant 6/6 beater that will be making your opponents discard a card each turn when he gets to attack. He is one of the biggest creatures in the cEDH format, and I think you will have a great time the longer the game goes, either grinding your opponents down, beating them with Kroxa, or preparing for your own win.
Thank you, Josh. Very informal tips. Yes, very informal. I think something very interesting is the idea of tutoring for a waste knot as like a advantage piece or like a card advantage engine. Kind of reminds me of when you would like tutor for a Rhystic Study or Mystic Remora when you're playing an Adnos deck and you want to grind a little bit instead of like going straight for the win. So very interesting. I totally forgot that, you know, using waste knot with Kroxa kind of works that way. So I think that's a very good tip. Also, the tip for learning how and when to cast Kroxa is very interesting as well. I think most of us would think you would just want to leave the Kroxa in the graveyard because you can always escape it, and also you kind of want the other body to start your animate dead loops. But very interesting that sometimes it does make sense for you to put them away back in the command zone so you can have another easier cast and disrupt your opponent's hands that way. So very good tips. Thank you, Josh. We'll definitely keep that in mind. But he's not the only Kroxa brewer we have here. We have another Kroxa designer. For the first time on my channel, we get to hear what igligl sounds like. Here's igligl talking about Kroxa. We've seen his bajillion deck lists, but we've never heard of his wisdom behind the brews. So here we go. Let's learn about his Kroxa deck.
Kroxa is a deck where you're trying to prey on a mid-range meta by running stacks pieces and pyroclasms. If you're playing against mid-range decks, you basically just win because you just take out their dorks. You play stacks pieces that slow them down. You either win with World Gorger or reanimate like Siren Insanity or Villas or something, or you just escape Kroxa and you win. You also want to make sure that you keep hands that have at least some piece of interaction, whether that's stacks, pyroclasm, red blast, removal, something like that. You're not really looking to win very early in this deck. It's a control/stacks deck, so you just want to slow the game down until you can escape Kroxa or win, basically. When playing this deck, you actually win more through combat damage with big creatures that you reanimate than you do with World Gorger lines. And when you cast Kroxa, like turn 2 or turn 1, you definitely want to send them into the graveyard because escaping Kroxa is really good in this deck. If you're not up against just mid-range, the game kind of gets a little harder. When you're up in NOS, you have to aggressively mulligan for some stacks pieces. When you're up against stacks, you basically just want to get a big beater out on the board so you can win the stacks battle. But really, this deck excels when you're playing against mid-range. Everywhere else, it's kind of meh. So I would recommend only playing this deck into pods where you think you're going to be up against 2 to 3 mid-range decks.
Very interesting. Kind of forgot how useful the combat step is, especially for a stacks deck. So definitely will keep that in mind. I was really focused on like the World Gorger combo stuff, but But it does make sense that if you get a stacks out board, a Siren Sanity or like a Villis or another like Big Beater will help you get you there. So thank you, Eagle. I will keep that in mind. Now we have big time Oktober Fest competitor, semi-finalist, I think, top 16 competitor, Ryland. He's gonna give us the secrets for Tym, all the tricks, how to like perform well at Tym. I'm very interested because I have no idea how to play this deck, so I'm gonna listen closely, very closely to this. Let's hear it. Ryland.
Tym mid-range druid. I'm gonna give some pro tips. So the main combo is having devoted druid in play with a pump spell that gives it at least +2 toughness. This allows us to tap it for mana, put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it, do that 3 times, float 3 mana, use that mana, remove the 3 counters from Devoted Druid to activate Tym, and we just do this over and over again until we have milled ourselves and put every permanent that's 3 CMC or less into play. With that, you can really win whatever way you choose. The most efficient lines so far that we've found are Assassin's Trophy loops, Deathrite Shaman loops. You can infinitely cast Finale of Devastation and just go to combat. Yeah, those are the main ways that we can win. You could put in like a Praetor's Grasp if you wanted to and just exile everyone's library. I choose not to play Praetor's Grasp, but it's an option. So, mulligan decisions, I prioritize some early hate pieces and value engines because we're not a very fast deck. We can win fast if the hand grants that and the pot is a little slow. We can win early, but I just choose not to prioritize that. I try to look for things like a Root Maze, Deafening Silence, Collector Oof, No Rod, a little bit of mix of like a Dark Confidant or a Tymna, or even a Wall of Roots. Wall of Roots is especially good with Tym because we can put a -0, -1 counter on it, and we can do it on every turn, and then we can remove those counters with Tym to activate her ability, or his ability, I don't know. So it's kind of like a Seedborn Muse-esque effect for us, which is pretty dope. Things like Necropotence and Ad Nauseam, these are really kind of burst effects that we're trying to use to really get to outvalue our opponents, basically. It's always best to cast Ad Nauseam at the end of turn before ours, and the deck is built in a way to, you'll generally draw enough gas and tutors and things that you need to win so that you can untap, play your land, do whatever, and you can win on that same turn. So some really good tutors are Ranger Captain of Eos, because it can tutor Allosaur, Shepherd, and Shieldmate, which are the 2 creature pump spells that we use for Devoted Druid. Allosaur Shepherd is my personal favorite because, for one, it can't be countered. 2, it makes 90% of the deck uncounterable. And it can also be just a beat stick late in the game. You can make all your elves 5/5 dinosaurs, which is pretty cool. Top deck tutors like Vampiric Tutor, they can be pretty clutch with Tym. If you need something in a pinch, you can cast Vamp Tutor to get whatever you need right at that spot, activate Tym, and put it right into play. Another thing about Ranger Captain is you can sacrifice it for a silence effect, and then activate Tym and put it back into play and tutor something else. Like, you can just keep silencing your opponents. So yeah, I mean, you generally just need to know what your opponents are playing and how they're trying to win. That really helps the mulligan decisions with this deck, because we play things like Linvala, which is very good against a lot of creature decks. I play it specifically because I play against Kennen and the Gitrog monster a lot, and the Gitrog can't really win against Linvala, so yeah, it's pretty good. And I play against Thrasios a lot, so you just have to know your pod, know what to keep. A turn 1 Root Maze, I always love that. This deck is pretty good at breaking parity on our own stacks pieces. We run a lot of mana dorks, so Collector Oof and Null Rod is pretty good for us. Deafening Silence kind of hurts us, but not really, because we're more worried about getting creatures out. But it does stop, like, if you want to play a couple more spells a turn. Root Maze is really good because we can break parity on it pretty easy with like Arbor Elf and a Wild Growth on a forest. Earthcraft helps with breaking parity on Root Maze as well. So that card is really great. I talk real big about Root Maze. I love it. So yeah. Pro tips.
I see. I think Alan from Ramp Gang would really like hearing about all the Root Maze love. He's also a very big fan of Root Maze. I think also the most interesting thing I've ever noticed or never thought about is the Allosaurus Shepherd as a pump spell or a pump ability for Devoted Druid. And yeah, it's true. Allosaurus Shepherd does a good job protecting everything, but also giving you like the pump effect you need on the Devoted Druid. So thank you, Ryland. I will keep that at heart. Also, just interesting that Earthcraft is a way to go kind of asymmetrical a little bit with the Root Maze. Very, very interesting. Thank you, Ryland. There's also more Tayam secrets. I have one more brewer, one more list to talk about. Wow, so many secrets for Tayam. Very enigmatic for sure. Good joke. Okay, the next brewer, last brewer is Zero with the devoted Enigma. Another interesting Tayam list on the database. This one has Wither Bloom Apprentice and Chain of Smog, but also something very, very spicy. So okay, let's see what enigmatic secrets he has. Zero.
So the Devoted Enigma, my take on mid-range Tayam is a little different than the other mid-range lists because I do run a couple of additional combos for more combo redundancy, more Tayam engines for more consistency with the commander, and more hate pieces to catch up with the faster decks at the table. So for the combos, given the name of the list, I obviously run Devoted Druid. I just want to note with that combo that Earthcraft is a pseudo haste enabler for Devoted Druid. Because with Earthcraft on the board, you could play Devoted Druid, pump it, tap it with Earthcraft, and basically get the mana with a basic land instead of having to tap it on its own. So Emergent Zone, great utility land, allows you to flash in Druid instead of having you play it on your turn and potentially having it removed throughout the next turn cycle before you even get to activate it. To synergize with Earthcraft even further, I run Squirrel Nest for that compact A+B combo. An interaction with it is that if you add Tayam and Gaia's Cradle, you get a win on that same turn because the Infinite Squirrels gives you infinite Vigilance counters with Tayam and infinite green with the Cradle. While it doesn't win you the game on the spot just as an A+B, there's still a lot of potential for it to be more. So, with Strixhaven, we thankfully got another compact A+B combo with Witherbloom Apprentice and Chain of Smog. I do recognize the risk that it comes with this combo, but honestly, with Abzan, it gives you a bit of a safety net with all the silence and protection effects that white and green bring. When slotting this combo in, I did make sure to tech the list for maximum protection. I already ran most of the cards, but I did add Autumn's Veil and Grand Abolisher to max it out. When it comes to engine pieces, you really want to look for one card engines to activate Tayam. Tayam is a very cost-intensive commander to activate. I mean, 3 counters and 3 mana, that's expensive, and the single card engines that interact with this are very rare, but those that interact with it are very potent. So Wallaroots, the main one, I would say. My personal spicy tech Mana Gorger Hydra. Yes, Mana Gorger Hydra in cEDH. You'd be surprised by how quickly it gains counters throughout a turn cycle. And while those counters rack up, you could just beat down ad nauseam players and then just remove the counters after that. If you want to run more of these engine cards, the next best options I would personally say are Incubation Druid and Felidar Retreat. Felidar Retreat, as a side note, also has its own combo line with Tayam. So some key cards I wanted to mention are Crop Rotation, Dark Ritual, and Hushbringer. Crop Rotation in mid-range Tayam is a nice little utility belt for the deck because you could get Hash Up Oasis or Centaur Garden if you want to run that as a additional pump for Druid. You could get Emergent Zone to flash in Druid or the Witherbloom combo. Or you could just get Gaia's Cradle simply for the ramp or the additional combo piece. Dark Ritual, obviously a cEDH staple, but it's just a powerhouse for this deck because it's not the fastest of decks. And just enabling you to push out Op Agent, Adnaw's, Necropone's, Felidar Retreat, and the Witherbloom combo a lot sooner is just very crucial. Hushbringer, great hate bear for this deck. It's not one that many white decks could run, given the nature of the win cons in this format. Kills Dockside, kills Oracle. It does kill our win cons because we do combo through Eternal Witness triggers. But with those Eternal Witness triggers, we do go through Phyrexian Tower and Sylvan Safekeeper loops. So we could always sack the Hushbringer before we even get to any step involving Eternal Witness. The same goes for Strict Proctor if you want to run that as well. So that's all I had to talk about the Devoted Enigma, but I just want to say, Rebel, good luck, tear it up with this list, and do your best to get in Mana Gorger beats. I do want to see that. Take care.
Oh, thank you, Zero. Thank you, Zero. I think something I was really interested in this list was actually Mana Gorger Hydra. I was just thinking about Mana Gorger Hydra as just like a really good beater because I'm used to seeing like Ishai do really well. Just like generate counters really quickly, really easily in cEDH. So I just thought like, wow, seems like good Nas beater tech. But then now you make a lot of sense when you bring up the counters. When I was goldfishing some Tayam hands, I realized like how difficult sometimes it is to like always have a source of counters. So it makes a lot of sense that Mana Gorger Hydra is like that counter engine thing that you need to like keep activating Tayam for value. I think that's a very good tip. I think another really great tip here is just using Emergent Zone as a way to like get your Devoted Druid to tap on the turn you need it to tap. I'm used to using Emergent Zone to like flash in spells like off of a Necropotent and stuff like that. So I don't really think about it from like a play pattern of giving something pseudo haste, which makes a lot of sense, and I definitely will keep that in mind. Also, Crop Rotation now seems like it's a much more stronger card than I initially thought it was, because I totally forgot that there are pump spells or pump abilities attached to lands in this deck, so Crop Rotation I can see like a lot of value there. Lastly, I think what's nice about this list is also playing Witherbloom Apprentice, so for newer players like me, where some of the timelines might seem a little bit more complicated or complex to execute, I think having a nice A+B like that is pretty good. It's like a nice and safe fallback to use. I also don't mind the Chain of Smog, like making yourself hellbent, because the deck is it has so much permanence. So when you discard a lot of the cards you have and it fails, at least all those cards can be recurred by Tayam, right? As long as you have enough counters and mana. Like making all of your cards like discarding into graveyard isn't the worst thing, if also that means you're able to like use the Chain of Smog to force your opponents to discard. So I think this is like a really good place for it. Yeah. So that is all the spirit guides I have for today. Very interesting tips, learned a whole lot, and I hope if you're interested at home to play these decks, you can you learn something from these masters and master brewers, so that you can play the deck better. Yep. Also I have a big announcement, very big announcement soon. So you want to pay attention to the channel or go to my Twitter and learn and pay attention to that as well. I'll be streaming all my Major League Commander games on Mental Misplay. Yep. You don't want to miss it. You really don't want to fucking miss it. So you want to be there. I will see you there. Hopefully you're gonna be there to cheer for me, and I will feel very good about it. Yep. So I will see you there, right? I will see you there. See you there. Bye-bye.